We are back in the building. I am here with Terrance Jordan. He is an entrepreneur, co-host of the Fellas podcast and Champagne Talkz. I will have the link below. Recently, I was on Fellas podcast and we had a really good time. So make sure that you guys go and listen to that so that you can have a little bit of a prefix to this conversation that we're about to have. Right. Terrance, we're doing this again. We're switching sides. We're going to have a good time. What's up?
Yes. What's up? What's up? I appreciate you for having me on your platform. Let me do my drop real quick. Standouts in the building. You know how I'm feeling.
Ooh, ooh. So let's start straight from the top. We'll make it easy. Give us a little context of who Terrance Jordan is and life out here in Vegas.
Okay, cool. Terrance Jordan. Who's Terrance Jordan? God damn. All right. Well, let's start back to the beginning. I'm a guy that always stood on like my name, T Jordan. You know, that I'm a franchise that it's going to be trademarked and everything. but I'm a person that always stood on my name. Grew up in Carson, California. Moved to Vegas when I was like 16, 17 years old. Hated it at first. Like it was the worst because I was playing football in California. I already had my friends, and this is around the time that I started DJing. Like I thought I was going to be this big time DJ. I still do it on the side a little bit, but that was like my passions outside of women, right? So I moved to Vegas when I was 16. Went to Centennial High.
Played football there?
No, I didn't. Like this is going to be great content because I came to Centennial High. I thought it was a shit because in California. Shout out to Carson High. Like I was doing my thing. You know, I even had, as a sophomore, I even had certain schools looking at me, Utah State, Texas State, and some small D2 schools or whatever. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm the shit. You know, I had that cocky mindset, like I'm the shit, like, and I ran track. So I'm like, when I moved to Vegas, I'm really, really going to be the shit, but I don't like their style of football is totally different. Their culture is totally different. So I try to go, me and my boy Randy, try to go and try out for Centennial's football team. So like I kept on getting the run around. He said, well, you don't have Nevada insurance. I said, wait a second, hold on. Like in California, and this is a bad thing that a lot of people do. They always compare states. Like, well, where I'm from. But now in California, you can rent insurance to the school because I had insurance, but it was still California's insurance. So that broke my heart that I couldn't play football. Halfway through the season, they thought they were going to be good because they had one of the best running backs in the state, Jaron Walker. He gets hurt before the first game. So now their season is not as impactful as they wanted it to be. The coach came to me, and he was like, are you still interested in playing football? I'm like, no, like I got this JD experience now. So, I didn't wind up playing for Centennial, wind up going back to California my senior year and then moving back and forth, doing homeschool, stuff like that, working, moved out the house at 17. My mom was devastated, heartbroken. Sorry, Mom. Moved out. I thought it was grown. Always wanted to be grown. So I moved out at 17, had a job. I was a hustler on the side. So I thought it was big bad. Then I had to humble myself. And then it just went from there. Like I always wanted to be like this A&R entrepreneur type of dude. I always had hustle in me. So I understood business really, really well. And that's what gets you to stand out today. You know what I mean?
It is. You have to have either the hustle mindset or some sort of intellectual curiosity to be an entrepreneur nowadays. 100%. And for the majority of the time, you're building this journey alone, or it's very dark and the light is lit very dimly. So you don't know where you're going to go. But those experiences is what propel you forward.
Exactly. Like 100%. And I remember telling my boys, like, yo, I'm gonna do this DJ shit because that music is one of my passions outside of sports, but I don't want to be like, I want to be this mysterious dude. I don't want to be the face of anything. I want to be this mysterious dude that knows a lot of people behind the scenes and stuff, A&R type of cat. And they were like, that's stupid. Like, like you should be a rapper. And I'm like, no, like I could rap, but like I'm not a rapper. I don't want to be famous. You know, I want to be paid. And
Yeah, you're stepping out of pop culture too, because back then being a DJ was not popular at all. Where rap was
exactly like they're like the DJs, they might get $500 when the rapper might get $1,500. You know, as a new or independent artist. Well, actually, back then, independent artist wasn't even popular. Like, you was unpopular if you was an independent artist, you know? So now, like, being an independent artist is popular as fuck, you know? So, yeah, so I, just going forward, I just stayed on my grind. I had this vision that, like, throughout everything, like, I know that I had to be here I got to be myself. I had to create my own lane. So I started wanting to create this network. It was gonna be called Standout Entertainment, right? Well, this is the MySpace days. Well, that went to shit.
Top 8. I remember bulletins.
Yeah. So I was like real passionate about that shit, and the MySpace started fading out. So like the things I was doing on MySpace didn't really translate to Facebook. And you know, like a lot of people didn't know me as Standout. Like I didn't even name myself Standout. Like this is what happened. It was this dude that was hating. Well, it was a couple guys. It was this guy that was hating on me, and like he'll like dirty Mac to the girls and be like, "Yo, this dude thinks he's Standout, blah blah blah. He got his jewelry, he got his ring, blah blah blah." And like he'll talk shit to them, not knowing that they'll come back and tell me, right? So then going forward, playing football, because I played arena football at one period in my life.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I played for 2 years.
For which team?
I played for a team in Phoenix. We'll get into that because they fucking sucked. And like it was like my uncle, he told me, he's like, "What are you doing? You are basically not really getting paid nothing. You know what I mean? It's like $100 a game type shit in IFL. You're barely getting paid. You're commuting back and forth. Like, why are you chasing this dream? It's not really that smart. You're actually wasting more money than you're actually getting." And I'm like, "No, I'm a passion. I'm playing the CFL, blah blah." So that shit was fucking terrible. We won one game the whole season. We had players fighting each other after games, and then, you know, in the parking lot, in the locker room, dudes from all over the place. It was unorganized. And then I met this coach. His name was shout out to Anthony Bartley. If anybody researches him, they'll see he's all over the place when it comes to football. Like he had a million different arena teams, 8-man teams, whatever. I played in GWFL for Sin City Assassins, which it was like an indoor league, but it really wasn't no pay into it. And we won 2 championships when I was there. And then I got a look for more teams, and I'm like, okay, cool. Like I'm the shit. I'm about to really pop. You know, I play defensive end and linebacker. You know, nothing glorified about me. I'm the humble, confident dude, right? So I'm humble enough to like I don't need the spotlight or none of that shit. But I'm confident enough because I know what I bring with everything.
You're
right?
a true team player.
Yeah, I'm like definition of a team player. Like you get the highlights. Like I just do my job, right? Same thing with the podcast. Like I might be the face of the podcast, right? But like it's like I always make sure I say it's a team effort. Like this is a team thing. Like I could go off and do my own thing, but this is a team thing. You know what I mean? And a lot of people, they like to do, "Oh, it's your podcast." No.
And having a co-host on a podcast requires a lot of flow, a lot of patience, and a lot of camaraderie, because sometimes you and your co-host may not be on the same page, just as the same way you and your football teammate might be having a bad day or are internally beefing. But when you're on that field or when you're recording, you have to be on. You have to be fluent.
Yes, 100%. And I had to learn that the hard way, you know, from football, because, you know, if one person is not on the same wavelength as everybody else, then it's not going to flow. It doesn't matter how much talent did you have, right? So going into the podcast world, like I didn't even want to do podcasts. Like everybody was like, "You should do a podcast. Like you're funny as fuck." Blah 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 blah. And I'm like, well, if I do a podcast, it has to be like something organic. It can't be it can't feel like a show. It has to be like organic as hell, right? So I pitched the idea to I'm not gonna even name his name, but I pitched the idea to somebody who previously had a podcast. And I'm like, look, let's build this up like a network. You'll be the single artist, and I'll be and me and my guys, my uncle and my boy Danny, will be the group. So we'll do like a record label. You got your featured, artist, and then you got your group artists, Bad Boy, Death Row, all that shit. And so he's like, yeah, that's a fantastic idea. So during the pandemic, I like to call it something else, but we're gonna leave.
What do you call it?
I call it a scamdemic, but
Okay.
but a lot of times people say I'm a conspiracy theory, so we'll leave that alone. So I spent like 10 grand just buying equipment. In between buying equipment in studio to make it happen, and the guy that we were supposed to do it with, he wound up backing out. And so he was like, nah, that's you guys. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, whoa, like we was supposed to build this together because I got this vision that we are like, I want to see everybody win. Just like when you were on my shit, I said, dog, I want to see you win. I want to see Angela win. I want to see this person win. I want to see everybody that I come in contact with that I like. I want to see them win.
That's traits of a true leader. They should possess that. If you don't want anybody else to win, then you're probably egocentric.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I feel like it's enough of everything out here for everybody. So if it's enough money out here, and we could go into crypto, like it's you could get fucking satoshis and shit. So it's stock. It's enough out here for everybody, right? It's just if people want to share or not share, right? So that blew up real quick, and then we had the struggles of learning how to actually podcast because my boy Danny, shout out to Danny B, he grew up a totally different way. I grew up a different way, and city boy from Carson, California, and then my uncle, he's his own way. You know what I mean? So we had to learn how to flow within each other.
And was this the first iteration of Fellas Podcast?
Yep. We started June. We started May of last year.
So we were right around the same time as April.
Yeah. So I'm talking about when we started, like I'm bringing mixers and interfaces to the job. We're like, I'm luckily like everywhere I go, I'm like cool with everybody. I try to be cool with everybody. So like the managers and the supervisors, like, yeah, we'll let you have our dispatch office. We'll let you have this office, whatever. We make sure nobody go in there. We'll lock the door, whatever. Let you guys record. So like the first 4 episodes, like we recorded like at work, like when everybody started going home, when it wasn't as busy, we recorded at work. And like the first 2, shit, we had to do that like 30 times because like I never edited a podcast in my life. So
it's a wake up call.
Yeah.
It's a wake up call.
So the first time it didn't save right. The second time it was like mad echo because the room wasn't insulated. It's hardwood floors. You could hear people outside the door like dropping, shit. And the third time it was just a whole bunch of people walking in, so I had to press stop, and it was all over the place. And then we started figuring out like, okay, we can't do it here unless we really need to.
So here, let me ask you this: before starting the Fellas Podcast, did you have any expectations or expected outcomes that you would have liked to see happen?
Yeah, let's get paid. Let's get paid. Let's have fun, and let's do this, right? And so my vision was, I'm gonna work the deals with the sponsors because I could work deals with sponsors all day. We're gonna get paid through sponsors. I listen to a lot of podcasts, so I kind of understand how like they work. I understand that like people might think that you're getting all this money, but really your money comes from sponsorships and views. So we wasn't on YouTube. Like I didn't start YouTube like 7 months ago. So I'm playing from behind the curve, right? So we just bought cameras and that messed up, and it was a lot with that. And my expectation was just like, let's just win. I'm gonna do this, you're gonna do that, and you're gonna do this. And that didn't happen exactly as planned.
Never does. That's the life of an entrepreneur. The hardest part is getting it off the ground.
Yep.
And then once you kind of get going, then you have that exponential curve of growth.
Yes.
And viewership from that. But as you mentioned that you started the video component to your podcast a few months after you'd started. I was the same way. It took me about 3-4 months to kind of figure it out, because you want to make sure that you have some sort of novice skills, or at least a decent level of skill and knowledge pertaining to it, because you don't want to go through everything with the video, because it's a completely different process.
Yes.
But even if nobody's watching your podcast, it's good for SEO and good for marketing purposes, because YouTube's the number 2 search engine in the world.
Yeah. And be honest with you, a lot of people don't know that YouTube is actually owned by Google.
Yep.
So, they kind of work hand in hand, but that's for another talk. Like, I'm not going to get too nerdy and shit in here, but yeah, man. So we had our learning curves, and then we added another member to the podcast. And my thing was like, how is this going to flow with 4? How is everybody going to get their equal amount of talking time? How are we going to flow? Like, how are they going to do their thing and say what they need to say without being interrupted or the conversation flowing right? Because at first we were like, we'll kind of know what we're talking about beforehand. But I noticed that when we kind of knew exactly and we had points of what we were talking about, they'll lock in too much into those points, and they'll forget like how to flow properly. So I was like, okay, I'm going to tell you a topic, and then we're going to just do it like that, because we're not going to do current events, because we're going to shoot 2 in a day. So if we shoot 2, we don't have to do it every week. So we'll go off of topics rather than current events. We'll just add current events into it if we can. So that we started finding our niche doing it that way. And then, believe it or not, we started getting a lot of like overseas fans, a lot of questions and stuff like that. So like, all right, let's ask questions. I mean, let's answer questions and let's ask questions on our podcast. So that's when we started doing it. And then we start growing more and more. I'm seeing the audio version, forgetting about the video version, right? So I'm getting like hit up from people overseas. People were, hitting me up from states that I don't even like, you know what I mean? Like that I said, like, damn, fuck this state on my podcast or whatever. And like, those was the fans that was actually listening and messaging me back. So then we're like, okay, well, we need another component to this podcast. So we say, all right, let's do After Dark, where it'll just be me and Danny B. Big Unk, he's busy, he's married. Well, I don't want to get him in trouble, by some of the shit I say, because I'm raw and unfiltered, right? And his girls, you know how it is. Your wife might feel a certain way. I don't want to ever put him in that certain position. So I said, all right, we're going to create After Dark, and we're going to bring, because these are all the questions that's being asked to me. We're gonna bring women, and we're gonna bring men, or is it basically just gonna be us? We'll have guys every once in a while, but it's going to be women, and I'm going to tell women what it really is, as far as dating and relationships. Like, I'm giving you the perspective that a man would never tell you, but at the same time, I'm telling men how to date and how to really be in relationships. Granted, I'm not perfect. I'm not a dating coach. I'm not a expert guru. I just speak from experience and shit that I see. And I just state 100% facts. Like, I could fact you to death. I could give you a million different stats or whatever the case is. So that started taking off. But I'm like, damn, like a lot of times these girls, they'll say they want to come on, but they're not reliable. They'll flake. They'll cancel at the last minute.
That's all podcast guys, not just women either.
Oh my God. And don't think I'm sexist either. Because there's been a couple guys that done that too. Like, so I'm like, look, we're going to stay away from some of these interviews unless they really bring something of value, because a lot of these interviews, like, they don't do nothing from the podcast. Like, I was just telling G6, shout out to G6. I was just telling G6 the other day, I'm like, dude, like, we got to stop with interviews, because the only interview that did my podcast well was yours, was Angela with Faded True, and then, like, the shit with relationships, and, Bobby McRoy, he's a trainer. Shout out to Noble Arts Training. And Antoine was Free Thinker. Shout out to Free Thinker. Those are the only ones that did good as far as guests. and our fans started telling us, look, we don't like all these people on your podcast. We like hearing like
They're there for you.
Yeah,
Danny.
we like hearing entrepreneur shit. We like hearing dating. We like hearing how to be better. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna hold off on the fans and I'm gonna just do us. And, you know, here or there, I have a guest, but for the most part, I'm just gonna do us. And just yesterday, like I had a fan hit me up. They were like, please stop with the guest. They liked you. And they like I said, they liked Angela a lot. Like the numbers show. So, but it's certain guests. They're like, no, don't have them on there. They like G6 a lot too.
Your fans are there for you, so you have to listen to them at some point. So, how would you describe the content of the conversation between you and Danny when there's an absence of a guest?
Oh man, it flows perfectly because, like Danny, like I said, he's from the Midwest, moved to Vegas, moved to Atlanta, all that stuff, and like in the last couple of years, he had an awakening. So he's learning stuff that he was never privy to before, and he's kind of forgetting everything that he was taught and relearning a lot of different things and creating his own lane. So it works out perfect because I have my own lane, he has his own lane, and we just flow. Like we know when he's about to say something, I know when he's about to say something, he knows when I'm about to say something, so we won't interrupt each other, shit like that. So it works perfect, you know.
But in terms of the content, like, are you generally talking about entrepreneurship, current events, sports? Is it a mix of both?
You know what? To be honest, it's a mix of everything. We want to give you that barbershop talk and be well-rounded. I try not to talk about religion or politics because, like, I lean totally different from the average person when it comes to politics. And when it comes to religion, I believe in God, but like I might not be as religious. I don't want to offend nobody, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I tend to stay away from those two, but anything else for the most part, I think actually dating would be the number one, dating and entrepreneurship, because that's what people ask us about. So like I study, like people think that we just turn on the mic and a camera and shit and start recording. No, like me personally, like I study like different podcasts, is how the flow of their conversation is. I study like just different things in dating. I study like I think that I could never be great, right? So I think that a lot of people where they get complacent at is that they think that they're at this tier level and they don't want to take in no more new information, right? So with me, I try to take in as much information with everything as much as possible because a lot of people come to me. I understand that like I have somewhat of an influence to people, so I try to like study a lot. I'm like a fucking nerd. I'm like, if I was to describe myself, I'm the popular introvert. Like I'll stay at home. I don't really club. I don't really go out like that because I lived that life in my early 20s, my mid 20s and shit like that.
Yeah, well, your success is very dependent on your curiosity, and it will stretch as far as your curiosity will lead you. So the continuation of learning, even outside of a classroom, is what's going to propel you up into the upper echelon of society.
Yeah, 100%. Like, and I think that is why I had so much success with women. And
they like you for your intellect.
Yeah. Like I pay attention. Like I tell guys like this all the time. Women would tell you one thing, but that's probably not 100% true. You should never take dating advice from women. And some people, they might trip out like, whoa, what? You're sexist. You're this, you're that. No, stupid. I'm going to say a very simple line that, you know, I learned around the way. If you're a fisherman, right, should you ask the fish how to be caught? That doesn't make too much sense, right? Like, why would I ask a fish that's trying to get away from me to be caught? So understanding that man has limited access to sex and relationships, you know, you got to study your opponent. You know what I mean? It's like going, I'm a good basketball team, but I'm playing an inferior basketball team. You got to study your opponent. You know what I mean? So I go into life and dating like that. So like always been able to get women. That's always been my thing. I never thought girls had cooties, shit like that. I always loved women. So I always had success with them. I don't have no jaded bad relationships. I had some relationships where we had to end it, but I don't have that feeling where it's like, oh, forget this person, forget that person. No, like we could be friends. We just can't be together. So I take that in life. Like I understand that if you know business, you'll understand women. And a lot of people that go over your head, but if you understand business, you'll understand women. And I'm not saying that women are transactions and, stuff like that, but understanding business and being an entrepreneur, you understand the risk that you have to take. You have to understand that in business, you can never get comfortable in business. Like you need to elevate and learn more, bring in new products, stuff like that. Same thing with relationships. You got to understand that in relationships, like you have to elevate. You can't be a one trick pony. You gotta do good too. You gotta be have great customer service. You gotta be that great spouse or whatever the case may be. Even if you're a player, you gotta be good with them. You know what I mean? So understanding business, you'll understand women.
It's true. There's a handful of parallels between relationships and entrepreneurship. Like if those were the sides of a ladder and the rungs that connect, there's literally dozens of them. In a relationship and in entrepreneurship, you're constantly problem solving, right? And then also as an entrepreneur in a relationship, you have to provide value. Mm-hmm. You also have to be a salesman. In a relationship, you're selling yourself to your partner every day.
Yes.
And then you're also entrepreneur and relationship managing emotions. Mm-hmm. That's what huge thing that I learned as having my first business as an antique store and managing the business, but also managing employees, is that the hard part isn't actually operating the business. It's about understanding who your employees are, how you're going to encourage them to sell more. How do you manage their bad days? What do you do when they call out? What do you do when they want to take a sick day or something crazy happens inside the store? Are they going to be able to tackle somebody who's stealing from you? Like there's so many different parallels, and it's the same with relationships.
Yeah, 100%. Just, if you know, if you don't, then I can offer services to you for $24.99. No, I'm just joking.
But if you ring in right now, it's $19.99.
Yeah. If you add Jake at the end, we'll take off that 10%. So, no, like you get it, and just with podcasting, like a lot of different things that I would say that a lot of other people don't know. And you, like you said, like you told me on Fellas Podcast, you had a business before. So like going into like now you're an investor. Mm-hmm. So like now you had an angle that you see, but now you want to take another angle in the market and, flow with that.
Yeah. If you can apply various perspectives onto one outlet, then you'll definitely succeed. And even I'm glad that you noted that, because actually a lot of popular venture capital firms were founders beforehand. So they were the builder first, they were a business owner, and then they either cashed out or they decided not to pursue it anymore. But now that they take that perspective and that mindset, and then they apply it to investing. It's the same exact idea.
Look at like that's I'm glad that you brought that up, because look at all the big, especially last year. Look at all the big corporations, how their CEOs stepped down.
Ooh, I'm glad you noticed that.
And I tell people follow the paper trail, because they didn't step down.
They stepped down in January and February and December of 2019.
And what happened was they still stayed on the board. So they're still invested in that company. They're not the face of that company no more. Yeah. Why is that? Same thing with the divorces. Like they understand that I could have loopholes if I get divorced, and I have loopholes if I do X, Y, and Z, because I'm making all this money. And, everything in life is all about finding the gray areas and understanding loopholes and stuff like that.
Should I sign a prenup? Should I have a prenup signed every time I ever get married?
Well, the thing about prenups is prenups is depending on the state, that is one of the things that it doesn't really exist. Let's think about it. Dr. Dre had a prenup in California. He's still getting hit over the head for half this shit, right? And a lot of other people have prenups, and depending on the state, and depending on the time that they invested into that relationship, they find gray areas, and the lawyers would go find gray areas, and the man would get, or I wouldn't say necessarily the man, but for the most part, the man would get hit over the head for some type of spousal support. It just might be at a different angle,
So do you think one of the goals of life is to find a gray area? Is that how you find your niche? Find a gray area within society and then build within it to make it either black or white or provide more clarity?
I'm going to give you a perfect example that you kind of taught me. Crypto, right? Crypto was a great area for a long time up until now, like before it was popular.
Still relatively gray, though.
It's a great area in the financial marketplace, right? Where I could take X and put it here, and basically it's anonymous to them, and I'm still holding on to this, and it's not wrapped in that. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like how they want it to be. But I tell people like this. With anything, don't overinvest. Like if you're big into crypto, don't overinvest in crypto. Don't overinvest into stocks. Don't overinvest into stuff that could turn you upside down. So me personally, I don't overinvest in anything because that could really mess you up in the long run. Look at when the stocks went bad, like, when you had the Black Mondays and stuff like that. Like people that only did stocks, they were overinvested in it, and guess what? Same thing with relationships. Like I'm not saying that you shouldn't put your all into a relationship, but if you're doing something to the point where you overinvest and you're not noticing or paying attention to the smaller things, then you could lose that relationship. You know what I mean? So people are like, oh, you should be a relationship coach. And like, no, I don't like people.
Coaching also is a different monster as well, because now instead of a podcast, you have an audience, they listen to you, and then they can interact with you, and then you can selectively interact with them. If a coach, they're paying you, so, and then you have to provide services. You're in and out of their relationship every day, and they have more expectations because now they have skin in the game invested in you. So you have to be you have to be very positive, and it has to be a good day for you, because if they're paying you and it's a bad day, then they're going to be very angry, and it just causes a cascading amount of problems.
And then look at like some of the guys that made a lot of money off of being dating coaches, right? Your Derek Jacksons of the world. And then like it takes one thing and it messes up all that, and that's just not me. I'm not a salesman. I'm a dude that you could come to for advice, because I feel that everybody needs therapy, right? I'm a big advocate of that. The way you seek it is different. Like, I'm not telling you should go see a shrink or a therapist. Maybe you should talk it out with your boys, or maybe you should find something that's your therapy. But you need to release, and if you want to talk to me, for example, I'm going to listen 90% of the time, unless I just don't like you like that. But I'm going to listen, and I'll give you a little bit of feedback and stuff like that. But I could take it from that angle. But like, as far as charging people to give them advice, you could just listen to my podcast, and then you could take what you want from there.
Yeah, there's a ton of ambiguity and subjectiveness that surrounds relationships. It's a little bit different than the financial markets, where there's a number on the screen, so there's a clear winner and loser. Whereas relationships, there's so many relationships that are defined as complicated, and so there's no clear winner or loser. You're just you're in a gray area in perpetuity until the relationship inevitably ends.
Let me ask you this: as far as business, right? You had a business before with your father, the antique store, correct? And you helped build a business after that, right?
Yep.
So for people that is going into business, do you think it's good? Because I've been hearing this a lot. So do you think that it's good to go into business with friends or family members?
That's funny. I actually just had this conversation recently. I think my first relationship was with family members. My second business was with a friend. And now my business right now, Native, was business first, and then friendship developed afterwards. And I think that it's important to go in not as friends or family, but with a similar interest in the business, and then let the friendship develop there afterwards. Because
I agree.
This is no disrespect to Corey or anything when I was working on Chameleon, but you tend to look over a lot of the red flags when that person's been your friend beforehand. And then it's a little bit harder to be assertive because you don't want this to affect your relationship with them or the relationship with your friends that are friends with both of you, your mutual friends. So there's a lot more stuff that becomes overlooked. Whereas if you have a similar relationship, then you're goal oriented, you're business oriented, and you both have a similar outlook. And then the relationship and the bond becomes stronger as more progress within the business is made. Whereas if you have a friend first, your relationship's going to stay the same no matter what. So you're not setting as many goals thereafter.
Yeah, I agree because I had a business. It was a print shop, and we both had he had his clothing line already, and I was coming out with a clothing line. So it kind of worked perfect because we felt that we can add that on top of like doing everybody else's services. And so that's where I actually started the team apparel shit, was when I had the business in 2014. But I realized as friends, just because we're friends and we have kind of the same goal, doesn't mean that the business is going to work like we wanted to. So we started up, and I did business a whole totally different way from how he did business. And so I'm more like with business, I'm more of like the person that I like to have return customers. So I had that with DJing, hustling. I was a CD man in high school. I was a candy, and other things that we're not going to discuss. But, I was that guy. I was anti-middleman. So, I get, even though I was the middleman, right? So I get my, I always believed in getting people value for less, on top of giving them this great product, the same type of product, or if not better. So I had a couple of accounts where it was pretty big accounts, soccer teams, stuff like that. And at the time I had jobs and stuff because I knew that like with business, sometimes like you can't just put 100% of your faith in your business because you need health insurance, you need shit like that. So it worked out perfectly because I worked like graveyard. This is when I worked at the Hard Rock, right? And I had like other hustles going on. And he was the person that did like all the screen printing, the vinyl, that stuff. So
he's like the blue collar worker.
Yeah, so that's all he did at the business. So it was perfect. So I get the orders in. He got orders too. So I'm not gonna say he did it. I get some of the orders in. He get some of the orders in, and he'll do them. And then I just be the person, basically the blind or the ghost fucking investor, basically in the business. So, but once business started getting out of hand, where things wasn't getting right, and then you wanted to charge people for your mess up, that's when I don't like shit like that, So I kind of let a couple things slide, but when it kept on happening, and I'm like, dude, sometimes you can't make a profit to please the people that you messed up with, or to keep that person coming. Sometimes you got to skip the profit. As long as you're pushing the product and getting it out your hands, and you're making back what you put into it, that's all that matters sometimes. And so he didn't understand that he was more of a profit person. So, being that he's older and we're friends, I felt like, okay, we can't do this. We got to go separate ways. We got to do two different things.
And how long did you sit on the thought of ending the business before you actually had that conversation?
Like it was a couple months, it was like a lingering thing. And I was like, damn, like I got to find an approach. I got to figure out the way that I'm going to tell them. I'm going to let shit marinate first before I make a erratic decision. And then all it took was that one last time of being our stuff being messed up for a big account. And I was like, you know what? Look, man, we're friends. I'd rather keep the friendship, yada, yada, yada. But business, I can't have my name attached to this. I don't want to do business like this. I'm going to go my own way. You go your own way. You could keep the equipment, kind of buy me out for the shit, blah, blah. And that's what he did. We're still friends to this day. He lives in a different state. He's a great guy. And then like I just started seeing success with, me doing team apparel shit to the point where I put my clothing line shit on a back burner because I was seeing so much success with team apparel. Like everybody's like, yo, like I got smart. So at all my jobs, I started like, oh, you guys are having this event? Well, won't you come to me? Like, you know me, you see me every day, blah, blah, blah. And then with my current job, like we have tournaments, like a lot of sports tournaments. I'm like, well, you know, why go through these people that you don't even know? I charge you cheaper and I give you a way better product and I get it to you faster. So they started coming to me. So then they started telling their friends. And so now all of a sudden the charter schools are hitting me up. The AAU teams is hitting me up. The small football teams is hitting me up. So I'm like, okay, I know what to do. I'm going to keep on doing the same exact things. I got the blueprint now. And I took that in. That's how I did with the podcast too.
It's a trial and error mindset. Doing something new becomes easier with the amount of failures that are stacked on under it, as long as you could derive some sort of positivity
100%
from those failed experiences. I have a few who failed businesses, but I wouldn't be here today without those experiences nonetheless. But it seems like you kept your drive, your entrepreneurial spirit, even in times of turmoil. And recently you launched a second podcast, which I mentioned earlier, called Champagne Talkz. Mm-hmm. Can you just give us a brief description of what Champagne Talkz is and what the difference is between Fellas Podcast and Champagne Talkz?
Okay, so Champagne Talkz is more of a show. Like it gives you that show feeling where I give people their flowers, right? So I give people their flowers that's doing dope shit, but I pull up to you with the camera people. I pull up to your something that represents you or one of your venues, whatever the case may be, your studio, and we talk. And so I worked on the sponsorship, right? And so I'm still working on more details to that. But at first I was going to go get, I wanted to get like a local champagne or wine company. But a lot of people, they weren't answering, they wasn't answering emails or they wasn't answering like DMs from Instagram. So I was like, you know what? I met this guy, shout out to Sneak Apparel. He wanted to point me in the direction of Bel Air Rose. So I started talking to people from there. They're like, oh, yeah, you know, I ain't gonna go too much into the details, but they're like, yeah, well, represent the bottles, push it on your show. And I'm like, okay, cool. So with Champagne Talkz, we represent good talk, giving you your flowers while you're ahead, but it's just me. It's no, other hosts. It's just me, and then we pull up. Like we're gonna get you on Champagne Talkz, and
I'm stoked.
Like I could go anywhere, anytime, any place, and pull up to people's shit. I got plenty of camera people. So
do you find the conversations differently when you're interviewing someone in their own setting?
Yeah, well, because most of the time they're more relaxed. And, the talk is a little bit different. They're not in front of a mic and a camera, you know what I'm saying? So I'm asking different questions, instead of them being on the podcast and they got to look into the camera, do this, do that. Everything's just flowing, so I'm having more in-depth conversations with you and we're talking about more in-depth shit on Champagne Talkz than we would do on Fellas Podcast.
Interesting. And more in depth as you just push one topic a few levels deeper, or the topics are different?
I want to go into like your life. I want to like really like, I don't want to just skim over your life. I want to go into your life. What got you to this point? What happened? I want to hear the hurt. I want to hear the pain or whatever the case may be. And on the podcast, we don't really want to hear too much about that. We want to hear more so about your accomplishments. I want to hear what led you into every point of your life. You know what I mean? On Champagne Talkz, but at the same time, I want to congratulate you. On the podcast, it's more so we're skimming over you and we're listening to how you already got here, say it. So I want to, on Champagne Talkz, I want to see and listen to you more so. And on the Fellas Podcast, I'm doing more of the talking. I'm just leading you into the
right. So Fellas is more curated around what's and how's, and then Champagne Talkz is more whys for more in depth. So that makes complete sense. Mm-hmm. I like to consider my show the same as or very similar to Champagne Talkz. I like to talk about the hows and the whys. Mm-hmm. How did you get here? Why are you pursuing this still? How do you plan to pivot in the future? Mm-hmm. Talking about future expectations and talking about in the present, where the difference of talking in the past is more objective. It's a little bit easier of a conversation. But I find the interesting ones, the deeper you go, the more insightful, the more emotional, a little bit more subjective, finding those gray areas.
More comfortable.
Yeah. And bringing up a topic or bringing up a conversation that somebody's never said publicly, you could like see the like glimmer in their eyes where they're like, yes, somebody finally asked me the specific question, or they hadn't realized that they need to talk about it publicly to soothe themselves for whatever may have happened.
It's another version also of therapy. You know, sometimes you just gotta let shit out, man. Like you gotta let. For example, when I had Angela on Champagne Talks, like I know a lot about her, but like we learned more about her, more in depth about how she thinks this way and why she thinks this way and why she does things this way on Champagne Talks than we do on the many of the podcasts that she came on. You know, so like you said, it's different, you know, and like I said earlier, everybody has to have therapy. They gotta let out, man. You know, it's just how you find your therapy that's a little bit different.
Yeah, you're an impromptu therapist. Sense on the other end. Would you consider your audiences for each podcast to be the same? Is there a crossover? Are they two completely different audiences?
They're two completely different. Like the Fellas podcast, they're more of a. We want sex, relationships, entrepreneurship. The audience that typically listens to Champagne Talks are the audience that want to hear, that like biography, like reading, you know, stuff like that. So it's a totally different audience, you know. They like to hear about a person, you know, because they might get inspired by that. You know, people over here on the Fellas podcast, they just like hearing like, how can they get better, you know?
So it sounds like throughout the duration of this conversation, you've caught a little bit of the pod fever. Many podcast hosts or co-hosts tend to do the same thing. I have a second podcast as well that talks a little bit deeper about cryptocurrency. Do you have any intentions to go for a third podcast?
Yeah. The third podcast is going to be me, no guest, where it'll be exclusive on Patreon. I'll let the cat out the bag sooner than later, but it's going to be I'm going to really be breaking down like a lot of different stuff. Like, for example, like I'll be breaking down the wage gap in today's time, right? I'll be breaking down why we shouldn't be living like it is why we shouldn't be living like it's still 1963, right? Or I'll break down more politics and stuff. Like I'll give you the who's, wins, and whys. You know, even for example, like and this is going to be on YouTube. So even an example for what went on last year, I kind of break down more of that in depth. You know, but I know certain words and certain things you can't say on YouTube, so they'll censor you. So it'll be more in depth like that. You know, so it'll just be me talking, and then I don't want people to think that my co-host, shout out to Danny B, Big Unk, I don't want them to think that they think exactly like me, and because I might stand on something that they might not, you know. But what I stand on or the information that I bring is definitely, you could definitely look up all of it. You could definitely, and it's not just one source, it's hundreds of sources, and I always, you know, tag those sources and, you know, give people the information. But I know that YouTube and I know that other platforms will censor you for talking about it. So it's just me on my tangents and giving my facts and opinions and stuff.
And when you find success, sometimes it's required to differentiate yourself from your co-host. I mean, you guys found yourself success together, but to reach the pinnacle of whatever you're looking to achieve, it's generally done in a one player game.
Yeah, because I love my co-host, but having co-hosts is very hard. You know what I'm saying? If I didn't love them, then I probably would have just went completely solo. But I owe it to my fans to stay. You know, plus I love the conversations that we have. We all flow together. But it's times like where it's hard because, you know, like me being the face or whatever, I had to manage the schedules. If one thing goes wrong, it's not going to be on them. Everybody's going to come to me. If something doesn't get uploaded or edited right or whatever the case may be, even though I might not be doing it, they're still going to come to me. So if a post is not getting posted or, like it's Slack somewhere from people, it doesn't matter. They're still going to come to me. If a podcast is not done, why did you guys skip a week? Well, it's not going to be them. It's just going to be, hey, why'd you skip a week? So that's the hard part. So anybody that wants to get into podcasting, like, just know that we just seen with Joe Budden what happened with Joe Budden, right? We seen a couple other podcasts. Who's Call Me Daddy, or who's
Call Me Daddy, where the split up happened.
Mm-hmm, the split up. It happens to more than you think. There's a lot of other podcasts, but I don't want to go on a deep tangent with that. But they break up because it's hard. It's really hard to do it with other people because now everybody has to confine to schedules and this and that, and everybody has their own life. So if you wanted to get a podcast or if you want to start a podcast, look at every avenue before starting it, because there's a lot of time, money, but on top of that, you got to also understand that with guest hosts, there comes managing schedules and conflicting interests sometimes.
This is why I always try to have 4 or 5 podcasts in the bank, because a lot of people bail, schedules change. Like you said, life happens. And for me, I like to do everything in person because the conversation's a little bit better, and so it's not laggy. So you do have to take those into consideration. But so over the longevity of your podcasting career, a little over a year, what do you think you've learned the most through the entire experience?
I learned you gotta be consistent and you have to want to grow. Because if you don't see those two things in mind, your podcast is going to fail. I helped 3 podcasts get started, and they just thought it was going to be easy. It wasn't as consistent, and they didn't want to grow, and they failed within like 6 months. So consistency and growth and networking. Those 3 things that you need the most when it comes to podcasting.
Yep. And we are, as Podcasters Unite, we are on the precipice of the audio influencer takeover. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of podcasts out there. There's only about actually 600,000 active, even though there's millions that have been created, which seems like a lot, but across the world, really not as much. But as society becomes more digitized, those who are in their respective geographical area are going to look for local leaders to connect with. And if you're in somebody's ear for an hour, that's much different than somebody watching you on a YouTube screen for 5 or 10 minutes. It's a completely different relationship.
Different. Because I don't mean to interrupt you. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
Most YouTube viewers, they only probably watch.
The average watch time is 4.5 minutes.
Yeah. So they might watch the good points, and, unless it's somebody like really, really popular. You know what I'm saying? For example, like I said, I study other podcasts. So like, for example, when Mozzie came onto your podcast, I'm pretty sure, since that was probably one of your highest views, like people tend to watch that longer.
Yep.
But
he is the most watched video on my YouTube channel.
This video right here is probably only get like 5 minutes, But that's just basically what it is. And like I'm subscribed, actively listening to, listening to 11 different podcasts. And like I listen to more than I watch because I'm always on the go. So it's easier to listen.
Same.
That's how I found yours. Like before I even like knew you or whatever, like I was just looking at different podcasts, and you were a suggested podcast, right? Because they take the analytics and stuff like that. And that's when I found yours. And then I'm like, okay, let me go see if he has a YouTube and an Instagram. And so I seen that. I'm like, oh shit. And then I seen G6. It was one right before G6.
Okay, yeah. So that was like around December, January time.
It was one right before G6, and then I seen him on your podcast, and then I was like, oh shit, like that guy's kind of interesting. They're both kind of interesting, but like the first one I listened to, and I'm like, okay, this is. He sounds like a radio host, you know what I'm saying? So I didn't know that it was your first year, you know what I mean? Yeah. Until like I started watching more. I'm like, well, hold on. You only got X amount, you know what I mean? So either he does it, or either he just started like posting these, but you sound
Thank you.
know?
Yeah, if you go back to episode 0, though, very cringeworthy. But that's why I did 2 episodes per week, is so it's perceived that you've been doing it much longer. But also it's additional practice as well. But that also comes with time requirement to edit videos, as you mentioned, is the most pain-worthy thing across the whole podcasting experience.
I don't even edit the videos, so like I just post them. So like just think about it like this. So one person will edit. I'll edit the audio for the most part, right? And like I'm waiting on, I gotta time the video with the audio because I'm not doing it, or like I gotta try to get clips out of the person that's editing or whatever. Which that person just started learning how to really edit. You know, that's the passion that they want to in the hobby that they want to do. So I'm like, damn, like now this person's taking forever, or there's been times where this person did it like that, you know? So that's the hard part sometimes is, like you said, the editing and, you know, trying to market and promote and keep on posting the same thing. Cause, you know, people get tired of seeing stuff like.
It's a grind, man. Yeah. It's a grind. You just got to be consistent. And I've learned that although some people may not listen to the podcast, they do enjoy that 1-minute clip. And that's that's their version of a view. That's their version of a support. And so even though it seems like some people may not be watching or be listening, a lot of people are, because I run into people in Vegas all the time and they're like, oh, I see you have a podcast or whatever. And they learn more about it. So it's all about the grind. And then that exponential uptick happens at some point in the future. But before we get out of here, I got one final question for you. What does Las Vegas mean to you?
Las Vegas is a special place that means like you could be whoever you want to be. But let me say this. Stop competing with each other because everybody has their own lane. Like you don't want to be the same as the guy next door, right? So yeah, Vegas means to me like growth and opportunity.
Exactly, it does. There's enough to eat out here for everyone, as you mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast. So we are all aware of that. Where do I send all the listeners and viewers to follow Terrance Jordan along his journey?
Okay, follow us at Fellas Podcast _. You can follow me personally at Standout KO on Instagram. We're on all streaming platforms. You can follow us on YouTube on Elelevated One TV network. Hey, I'm starting this network and I'm going to have other podcasters, music, shows, all that stuff. I'm even coming out with a how-to manual. So like that will all be on the Elelevated One network.
Give them a follow, guys. It's all linked down below. So Terrance, thank you for coming on. I enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate you. I hope everyone will go down below and listen to you when I was on Fellas Podcast. And then at some point in the future, we're going to do Champagne Talk. But we're all thriving out here together. Shout out to G6 for being awesome and connecting all of us. And we're all thriving out here together.
Let's shout out G6 for being the 3. He definitely posted and has a lot of assists that he links everybody up. He's like the facilitator in Vegas.
that he is, and he's also seeing the spotlight as well. So thank all of you guys for listening. Thank you, Terrance, for coming on. I know we'll do this sometime in the future, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Peace.